like, well, I take a couple of people that might do that, but it falls all the time. Just like that.
And you hear me?
What's his name?
Now? Yeah.
Suzanne Governor.
Suzanne, she's working on her laptop. Getting it ready for the meeting. She's gotta get a new hard drive. The Al Kazan guy was there.
Saw that.
Yeah, 2020.
So are we waiting or are we not?
To you, Mayor.
She may just have to do the minutes from.
We have a recording of this.
Yeah, that's, I think how it's gonna go, unfortunately. Okay. We are recording. Everybody to the, Francis City Council meeting, September 14th, 2023. Go ahead and get started with
I just
a
saw the 14th.
pledge of allegiance. Shannon, will you lead us in the pledge?
I sure will. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. We'll first go to the invoice register and the approval of minutes. We have the check register on your Dropbox. You'll notice a couple of large ones. One of those is the water tank. The other is the park, the playground out here. That's paid for with a grant, so that's a lot of money, but
Is that for the restroom, the 174?
I didn't see that one yet, but I was looking at the 112, which is the,
Playground.
And I don't know if she was gonna get that, the CXT, the restrooms, they were delivered today. So they sent me an invoice today. So I don't know, she was gonna try and get that out, but I don't know if she did.
I'm looking probably at the newest one. What was the name of it?
I don't see
CXT concrete products.
Oh, yes, 162.
TXT Incorporated, it's on the very last.
It's on the very last page, page 4.
CXT, 162, restrooms for parks.
Yeah, that was 2 restrooms, one for the park down here and then one for the Wild Little Park.
Okay, any questions on the check register or the minutes from August 24th? August 10th and 24th, sorry. Losing my mind here. If there's no questions or comments, I'll take a motion to either approve or not approve those.
I'll make a motion that we approve the invoice register dated September 14th and also the minutes from August 10th and 24th, it looks like here.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second. We'll both second it.
Okay, we'll give this one to Shannon. Shannon, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, if you will, please put your initials on this check register. All right, next item is public comment. This is a chance for anyone in the public to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and open that now. Seeing no public comment, we'll close that portion of the meeting. And we'll move on to, I'm going to take a couple things out of order, if that's okay. We've got Brad here, but he needs to be done as quickly as possible tonight. So we'll move first to the discussion and acceptance of, or a possible acceptance of the interlocal agreement with Summit County EMS. I believe I forwarded a couple of different versions of that too. Suzanne, I don't know if it made it in
I think
here.
there's one that she had attached to the agenda, so this is the version I have.
Okay, yeah,
The September 7th one. is the most
Yes.
recent that I've seen.
So if you open the agenda in Dropbox, scroll past that, it's the second document in there.
you'll see the red line things. So, for the most part, I've been in discussions on this a little bit with, Julie Black, who's here, also with, Mayor McCormick and Dave Ure over the last little while. It seems that most of the concerns that we kind of had with the way the, ILA was written last time have been resolved. You can see the red lines. They've added an ambulance. They've added some definitions as well that I should point out. And they added the definition of an ambulance to be a fully stocked operable ambulance, not just a Suburban. However, you'll notice that they've left the Suburban in as part of the equipment that they'll be transferring over. So that would be 3 apparatus instead of 2, right?
Yep.
Other than that, in speaking with Dave Ure from the fire district, he's comfortable with our signing this as it is currently written with the new updates and changes. And then the district will have some things still to work out on their end, but they're comfortable with their ability to provide the service and to move forward with the way things are currently. And so it's anticipated that if we sign, Oakley's going to be signing or has signed, and Camas will be following shortly as well, along with the district. So that's just kind of the quick and dirty update. Any questions, concerns? We can open that to the council for discussion or questions now, so.
I went to the commission meeting last night about this, and after talking with Julie and Dave, there was a couple other things that came up yesterday that Dave was gonna talk to him about. And I let Julie know that we were voting on this tonight possibly, so she came. I probably just asked her any questions that we might have of her, but just from the meeting I went to last night, I'd be comfortable signing this. I think they've done a good job of getting us some concessions of some of the issues that we had, those types of things. But I also asked, hey, if we sign this, are we locked in? And it was basically everyone has to sign it for it to be binding.
Right.
If the district's not gonna sign it, if the district isn't happy with it, then we're not gonna be doing that in the service. So those are just my thoughts on it.
Yeah, good points. Also, something I didn't mention is by signing, we're not obligating anything morally, we're not obligating any money. This is just us saying, yeah, we agree that Southside Fire District is gonna take this over, and hopefully they will then follow suit and agree also. So, but that's anticipated, so. Again, there's no monetary, nothing binding the city monetarily to that, if that is some concern there, so. Is this a resolution? And or is there anything that you're concerned with, or?
You can approve it. So
Do we need a resolution to approve it, or can we just approve it?
we can approve it without a resolution. I can give you a resolution, so that you don't have to. A resolution will just be, here are the findings, here that we're approving this agreement, so we can create the resolution after the fact and still approve it tonight.
Perfect. And so are we approving the agreement, or are we just authorizing the mayor to sign the?
Authorizing the mayor to enter the contract on behalf of the city.
All right, so any other questions, concerns? Comments from the council? Okay, if that's the case, I'll take a motion for, to approve the contract and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city.
I'll make the motion that we approve the contract and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Clint. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your work on this, Julie.
Yeah,
Thanks,
for
John.
sure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your work.
It does not go unnoticed. Okay, the next thing I would like to see, yes,
There's a couple other things that we didn't talk about, but probably leaving for me to stay for,
okay.
meaning A, B, C, and D.
Meeting everything.
So,
if you see Andy-
Want to go back in order?
Okay, so what you're saying is go in order?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, but then if you excuse me at E, I'd be fine.
Like, we can do that. We'll try to get you out of here. Okay, next thing then is, item A. So we'll go back in order. Item A, discussion on building height. And I suppose this is a staff report.
It's not really a staff report, it's just a discussion item right now. I'm looking
Okay.
for direction on if you want me to take a code text amendment to the planning commission and start working on that process of getting it approved. I think most of you have met with Tim of Cobblestone Hotels, and you talked with him about the location and potential for a hotel to be in Francis. Most of you know the background there, but just as a refresher, as we've talked with Tim, we've kind of encountered a couple things with our code that are require an amendment for them to do the hotel that they want to do here. So I don't take this lightly. I looked at every code around us. I spent quite a bit of time researching all the cities around us to see where we're at compared to them. There's a table in the drop boxes that looks at how we measure height, the exceptions that we grant, the max height in the commercial zone, and then also, because it's of importance to this project, the parapet walls. So let's just jump into it. Francis, we measure our height from natural grade. Most communities around us do as well. Camas in their commercial corridor actually measures from the center of the road, from the highway. And I think from looking at how the road is on 32, that makes a lot of sense for Francis to adopt that as well, to measure from the center of the road, because 32 is up quite a bit, and then everything on the side is down. So any commercial business would have to build up a few feet just to not be swimming. If we saw with the Premier Pet Lodge, they built at natural grade, and that delayed them quite a bit. They were dealing with a lot of water issues. So any commercial business that comes in is gonna have to build up to not be swimming.
Right.
So might be worth looking at changing our code for commercial zones that we can measure from natural grade or from the center of the road. Another, Oakley, natural grade, Park City, the vertical distance under any roof to the existing grade. So they have one that's existing grade. That's another thing we can look at is I'm willing to let them build up and then measure from there. A lot of the more modern codes do the existing grade. So that's Park City, they do that. Summit County, also natural grade. So it's not uncommon around here to measure from natural grade, but Park City is an exception, and Camas also measures from the center of the road. So right now in our commercial zone, we allow a maximum zone height of 40 feet. We allow 10 feet for architectural elements like bell towers, church spires, clock towers, cupolas, things like that. They can get to another 10 feet, and then if they wanted to go higher than that, they can request that as part of a conditional use permit. So like the temple that's going in Heber, that's what they're doing right now, is they're working on this conditional use permit to be able to build that spire 100 feet high. So that's something that we have in our toolbox as well. We can do the conditional use permit if we wanted to go higher than 50 feet. Most cities around, all the cities around allow some, like between 5 and 10 feet of a height exception for those type of architectural elements. None of them really even talk about parapet walls. So parapet walls are, kind of put a definition down here, I think most of you know, but it's an extension of the vertical building wall above the line of the structural roof. So, so in the case of the Cobblestone Hotel, it's, the structural roof would be about 40 feet, and then they need probably 8, maybe 10 feet of the parapet wall to hide the elevator shaft and the mechanical equipment there. So, anyway, but I did look at parapet walls and other codes. Most of them didn't really talk about it too much. We were one of the only ones that actually already talked about it. And we said that it can be 18 inches above the roof deck or the maximum zone height. So we give 18 inches. We kind of talked about this in the meetings, that 18 inches from roof deck doesn't make any sense because then you have to put a railing up there just for safety reasons. So that might be something we want to look at. We could also look at, instead of changing the language so the parapet wall isn't covered separately, it could be covered as an architectural element if we wanted to do it that way. If we wanted to change something, there's kind of 2 ways to look at those parapet walls. Either change the code that applies to them or add a parapet wall as an architectural element. And then last, let's just look at the commercial zone heights that are around our community. So we're at 40, but up to 50 with an architectural element. Camas allows 35 from SR 248. And that is actually one reason why Cobblestone is here talking with us, because we have a higher height allowance, a little more friendly for that type of business. The general commercial zone Camas only allows 27 feet. Oakley is 32, unless it's required for commercial use, and then they can go up to as much as 50 feet. But they have to have approval from the fire district. And then Park Cities kind of really depends on where it's at, and then it has this, what's called a regional commercial overlay. It's generally 35 feet in the commercial zone, but if it's a regional commercial overlay, then they can go up to 43.75 feet for a flat roof. It gets a little complicated, but that's kind of how it works out. And then Summit County, it's 32 feet, unless they have the architectural elements. They can get up to, it can't exceed 50 unless it's in what's called their NMU zone. It's a neighborhood mixed use. And then they can go to 45 unless it's otherwise permitted through the master plan development, but then that max is 60 feet. So really the highest building you're going to see anywhere in Summit County could be 60 feet. So that's quite a bit of information I just threw at you, but hopefully with the talks we had earlier, that makes a little bit more sense. I worked up what could be a potential code amendment. Looking at this code, I found some issues where we're just repetitive, repeating the same codes over and over. I don't feel like that's necessary, and I think that could cause problems down the road, so I would clean it up. I would measure height, instead of measuring it from the middle of a hip roof, I would just measure it to the top of the roof line and change that, because I think when waters get a little bit muddy when you're measuring from the center of a roof line, I would just go right to the top of the roof. So I guess for some residential, that could be a little bit lower height, but I think that's easier for me to handle in the planner's office. And then, again, that parapet wall issue, how we want to tackle that, if we do. And we actually have an inconsistency in our code where at one place we say we can't exceed 50 feet at all, and another place it says we can exceed 50 feet with the conditional use permit. I would like to get one clear answer in our code. I don't want to have multiple rules out there. I just want one rule that applies so that we don't have different interpretations going on. Anyway, that's kind of the Reader's Digest version. Feel free to discuss it, this, we don't need, I feel like we don't need to go into all the detail tonight on this code because it will be coming back to city council after the planning commission looks at it. This is just to give me direction, should I move forward or not? So that's it for me.
Thank you. Maybe, yeah, go ahead.
One, just, so this is gonna give you some background a little bit, and I'll be brief, but, so one of the things, many of you know that I was a city council member in Salt Lake County, in a municipality in Salt Lake County for about 8 years. One of the things that we tried over and 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 over again was to recruit and bring hotels into the city. I know we're having apples and oranges, different size city and all that stuff, but one of the benefits to bringing in a hotel is you have the transient overnight room tax that you can levy as a council, and what that does is it brings in revenue from overnight stays in your municipality, and it creates a new source of tax revenue for the city. So I don't know if that's been discussed at all, but I just want to make you aware that that is a possibility, and that is one of the offsetting benefits to having, commercial growth, and hotels will typically attract also additional restaurants, which will begin to build a commercial tax base. So that's kind of one of the, I guess, benefit or consequence depending on how you look at it, but it's just something to consider.
Can you also speak to like having meetings? I know this came up a little bit, and I think it would be good for the council to hear from the city attorney about having meetings outside of the city council meeting with a couple of council members and kind of explain your view on that.
So it's not just a view, it's actually just what the code requires. So meetings with developers occur in every city all the time. They usually, developers are looking to bring in some investment into a city, and so they meet with city officials beforehand. In some cities, that is, in a city like Francis, it has to be the council, along with maybe 1 or 2 staff members. But there's not there's not staff of 50 people that are working for the city of Francis, right? So that is not uncommon. The code contemplates it actually, but what the code requires though is you can't meet as a quorum with a developer. If you have a quorum, you're discussing city business, then you have to meet and have it be a public meeting. But when you're meeting with developers to discuss potential investment in the city, that's routine, happens all the time. I've been in those meetings. I couldn't tell you how many times. It's just how many members of the council are there is the key. So it can't be, in Francis, it can't be more than 2. So if you have 3, and that mayor's counting that group, if you have 3, then you could be in violation. You're going to be hard in violation of the Open Meetings Act. But as long as there's less than 2 or 3, it's completely above board. There's no issues with it whatsoever. It's not against the law or anything like that. So is that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
2 or fewer.
2 or fewer. And it just from a practical standpoint, if just the way the development works is, the first thing when you have a development, you want to do whatever it is, whether it's residential, you got to know if there's demand there, right? And then before you go and spend money on engineering, developing your plans and all that, you'd like to know, usually you have a contract with the landowner, and you want to, part of those, there's an out if you don't get your entitlements, right? And so before you go to the expense of getting to that point, you usually want to have some idea, is this something that's going to fly, or is it not? Am I wasting my time? That's kind of simply what those meetings are there to just determine, to help an investor, developer, employees of the developer determine, does it make sense to try something here, or should we just move on and find someplace else to invest? That's kind of how that works.
Okay, any other questions, concerns, comments?
Mayor, I have one more.
Yeah.
This probably goes without saying, but this was probably 7 or 8 years ago. Francis was named as the most. Summit County Economic Development said that Francis is the city that's going to grow the most over the next 20 years, right?
Right.
And there are a number of factors that went into it. The county doesn't control that. You guys control that from most part, of what's incorporated, right? What of the areas that are incorporated in the city and annexed to the city. So whether or not that comes or not is largely up to the council on rezones. It's up to council on what happens with the water infrastructure. It's up to the council on decisions to make regarding other infrastructure of critical city utilities. One thing we know over the past even 5 years is the cost of all of that infrastructure are really high, right? And they're only getting higher. We're going to talk about that in moderate income housing component here. And just to show you, we don't even have current data on it. I couldn't find any current data for this, but we'll get to that and thing. But the cost of construction, the cost of labor, the cost of building materials, just from 2018 to 2021 was 30%. In that short time period, it was 30%. Now, you had COVID in there, you had all of the economic stimulus money that Congress allocated that flooded the economy with money and created a lot more demand and for a lot fewer goods and services that were available. So that's an artificial, kind of condensed, heightened, sped up process of inflation, right? So anyway, as the city looks, I know that one of the concerns is, well, gosh, we like the rural feel out of the city, and nobody's arguing with that. That's what drew most of you here, if you're transplants, or get most of you here if you grew up or were raised here. And one of the neat things that Francis has done is the conservation subdivision that's helped. When somebody comes in with a big development, they're not allowed to develop the whole thing. They can develop half of it, and the rest of it has to be preserved. I think that is an absolute win in any sort. But as you look now, as you're contemplating these kind of things, there's the decision to make it hand right now, but also looking down the future as costs increase. One of the benefits to commercial is there's not a residential exemption that gets reduced from your property tax on commercial. Commercial property is paid full freight, there's no reduction. So you get property tax, and then also you have the opportunity for the hotel to get a transient tax. Other ones you get sales tax. If there's a restaurant in there, you get sales tax from it. So all those things, you get a tiny share of that from stuff that you can trace, like Amazon. I think the city does get some money from Amazon for sales that happen in the city, but it's not a lot. But as you think about infrastructure costs and needs that the city will have as you go forward, having the commercial tax base helps slow the rate of property tax increases that will be required to maintain just status quo and to maintain the board infrastructure and service levels that you currently have. So that's just something to keep in mind. It's not not advocating one way or another. It's just be aware that that's part of the options you have for you to help. Looking down the road, it won't do anything today, but looking down the road, it will have an impact.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? I think, to be clear, there's some things that within this code that probably need some attention and some tweaking, regardless of whether a hotel is part of the consideration or not. I think really more than anything, this has brought to our attention the idea that maybe there needs to be some attention given to the code. And the reason I say that for me is I'm a fan of simplicity. So let's make it make sense. Let's make it so that whatever code we're going to hold anyone to actually makes sense, that it's actually enforceable, and that it's clear, so that when staff is looking at these different projects that come before us, they can go, well, here's what the rule is. There's none of this trying to guess what the interpretation will be. It's clear where the measurement's made, what the maximum height is, and all of those types of things. So for me personally, I'm comfortable with sending it and having you go through it, review it, make some changes if they need to be made. Don't if they don't need to be made, but I think it's worth the review. Regardless of what project may come, I think it's good for us to have our codes clear. So that's kind of my thought.
Do you have any thoughts on where we measure grade from? That should be different in the commercial zones and then parapet walls.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the parapet wall should either be a, oh, what's the word? What's the word that they use in the code? Architectural element, or it should just be a maximum height of X, whatever that number is.
Above the maximum height?
No, I'm saying that the parapet wall should either be put in as a architectural element or regardless of whether it's, I guess, I don't know how to explain. Put it in as an architectural element, so it could be, that could be above, you know, building height, or just say no building under any circumstance shall reach higher than X number. You know, just make it easy.
So we don't have a parapet wall called like a separate section to handle that, it's just what we handle under architectural elements or not at all.
That's kind of what I think.
Okay.
I mean, that's just one thought.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm looking at how do you simplify it, yet make it reasonable and, you know, functional.
Sure, yeah, I appreciate that.
If you just have a maximum height, then maybe it doesn't matter. Or if you can say, well, that's considered an architectural element, that could be 10 additional feet. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think one of those two at least cleans it up better.
Yeah.
And then as far as like where to measure, I'm not sure, I don't know. We've had this discussion over the years on a couple of different things. I remember measuring a yard or a house in Walla Scott one night. Seems like 100 years ago, but it's hard to determine, you know, natural grade. Let's say there's a slope, so where do you take the natural grade from? You know, and if that's not
Usually
fine.
it would be an average, right?
Right, so, you know,
So
so I guess what I'm saying is then you start having to make bigger definitions and complicate things more. So if you just say, well, it's a maximum height from the center of the road, or it's a maximum height from.
well, when the county built the road or the state built the road, why do you think they built it higher?
Right.
There's no question that we have a groundwater issue in the city, right?
Right, well, and in some instances, that could be quite significant. You know, some of this is built up 6-8 foot probably from some natural grade on some of those lots. So, I mean, it could be significant on, you know.
Do we still require water retention on those? I mean, if you're gonna build up, you're obviously gonna have to have some sort of water retention system so that you're not creating a problem for the adjacent property.
Right.
Right, that's one of the concerns that, you know, you should have and you should be thinking about as you make that decision, right? So but maybe we already have that in our code overall, retention of water is required.
Yeah, I think that's already taken care of in code.
So, okay, so that's not an issue.
Really, it's a matter of where do you measure on the building, where do you measure from on the ground?
Right.
You know, I'm kind of a fan of center of the street. Makes sense. It's gonna be pretty well, you know, it's gonna be fair across the board. It's pretty easy to find the center of the street and measure the height from there.
I would agree with that. I'd like to see the center of the street be our reference point.
For the commercial zone and the city center and residential, we keep that at natural grade, or we want to change that to existing grade?
Is residential can kind of art, especially like with the subdivision, with Hills of Francis Gate. You know, one side of the road is above,
Yeah.
the road is down.
Right.
Right,
We
residential,
said center of the road, this side of the road is straight.
Is that already, but they would have a basement?
right, residential probably ought to remain what it is. This is really more discussion about commercial.
Commercial, this all applies to anything off of a state road or state highway,
Right, this would be commercial and or
city center.
city center.
Well,
I think,
right, code's meant to be resolved or amended, right? So,
Right.
you know, sometimes we run into unintended consequences or consequences that weren't thought through, right? So making those adjustments.
yeah, I mean, right now, the 18 inches above a parapet wall, a parapet wall of 18 inches, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, it just didn't, wasn't thought through. I understand the intent, but it wasn't, no one builds an 18-inch parapet wall, that doesn't exist.
Well, those are designed really used to high mechanical
Right.
equipment for the building.
And 18 inches doesn't do that. No. So anyway,
Really small cooler.
right, I guess for me,
Really small.
yeah, I guess for me, what I'm saying is, we gotta take a look at it. We gotta direct staff to go to the planning commission and have it looked at. Maybe it'll change, maybe it won't, but let's at least look at it, is my thought.
Yeah, I agree.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Offer a couple words?
Yeah, you can come up to the podium.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's easier for us to hear you because there's a microphone over there. We can get it on the recorder better.
Tim Shevchik. Just in listening to some of the comments and a couple of things that, I just want to offer is food for thought. Open discussion to figure out what's the best solution. I agree with Mr. Mayor, simplifying the codes makes it easier. I know there's always the opportunity to do a conditional use permit for different exceptions. But I think that, and I think you always need to maintain that for your flexibility. But I think it's nice to have codes that fit and work. And if you grant fewer exceptions, you just don't expose yourself as much to scrutiny from other outside people. So I think that it would be in the best interest to review some of the codes and maybe clean that up, clarify and detail that. When it comes to the heights, right now, the language in there very specifically, and the first time Katie and I talked about it, the word natural grade. Natural grade is really comes down to what is natural grade? How do you interpret that? And I've been in construction and development my entire adult life. And most areas that I've worked, the height measurement, and there are sloping grades and measuring to the average of the height of the roof and all those there's a lot of different ways. I've seen a ton of different ways. But most of what I've worked on will measure the height of the building from the finished grade, using the words finished grade, at the foundation of the building. So now where you have a sloping lot and maybe you have an exposed basement for residential or even a commercial like use, you'd find the finished grade at the average of the finished grade and then measure to the height. But let's just assume a flat piece of property measuring from the finished grade at the foundation on that site, I think makes a lot of sense. Coming from the road, when you look at the road elevations, obviously these roads in the community were built out of the ground because of the surface water issues and the drainage issues that you have. I live in flatlands in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, so we have to create pitch to take water off of sites. And so what I understand, if we measure from the road, the center of the road, what happens is a developer wants to kind of get a little extra height, he can let his grade down a little bit lower. And if you don't have a vehicle in place to say that, the elevations of finished developed sites have to meet some standards, it's up to the developer. And if they develop like some of the properties that we have right now that were built at the grade that was there and didn't elevate the building, you have water issues, you have big drainage issues. And unfortunately, like we had talked, that all of a sudden comes back on the city. Even though you guys didn't have anything to do with it, it's your fault. So I think that for me, if you have it from the road, if the developer wants to push the envelope on the height, all they have to do is let the finished grade a little bit lower than the road, and they actually have more to work with. If they build it too high out of the ground, now all of a sudden they're penalizing themselves. And so you're not, what is that code doing? It lets a little bit for play, and I don't know that necessarily makes sense. Building a building at a lower elevation than the road isn't always a problem, as long as there's a plan to shed the water properly and have it drain. So, I can see that can work, but for myself and what we're looking at, bringing the grade of that site up to about where the road is is working, but I think the road could work against us. It could work in our favor. And I think, again, now all of a sudden you open yourself up to scrutiny. What if the property slopes and it's lower on this side, and it makes sense to build the buildings at a lower finish grade on this side of the road than that? I just think it opens up to a lot of interpretation down the road, and maybe finish grade at the foundation might be a better way to alleviate arguments down the road. And then the other thing is on the parapet walls, a couple of things. Parapet walls at 18 inches with a flat roof, that would force somebody that was building an 18-inch parapet wall, it would force a handrail for public safety around the top of that building. And that's gonna really take away from the look of the building. It's gonna be kind of not very appealing looking. So at that point, if it were me, I'd say if there's gonna be a parapet wall, it almost needs to be a minimum of 36 inches or whatever the handrail code is in this area. But I would think probably somewhere around 36 inches. So you don't have to have a handrail, because, then all of a sudden the developer comes and says, well, we put an 18-inch parapet wall, but now we have to put in a handrail. And it just isn't gonna present itself to the city. Honestly, I think it should just be, parapet walls should be moved into the architectural element. I see that in a lot of communities. I know Katie did a lot of research, which is really good. Doesn't really seem to show up a lot on a lot of the ordinances, but in a lot of communities that I work in, they view it as an architectural element. And I think that would probably be a pretty easy glue fix. That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, so to be clear, I'm not saying that what, the Center Street is the end all be all. Maybe that's the answer, maybe it's not. I think I would prefer the planning commission to look at it, work through all these different scenarios, figure out what they think is best, and we can consider that at another time.
Okay.
Myself. Do we need a vote on that, or can we just?
I'd love to hear from other council members, if anyone feels differently, but it'd be good to get a feel.
Anything else from anyone?
All right, we've got a planning commission.
Thanks. Okay, next, we've already done item B. Next item is Foothills and Francis Gate annexation. And this is just this isn't the actual petition, right? This is
the petition. So at this meeting, we need to decide if we want to accept or reject the petition. In my staff report, I put some information about the process for the annexation. I'm not going to go through all of that right now, but right now we are at step 3, which is to accept or deny the petition for further consideration. If we decide to accept the petition, then we will go through a little bit more of a process to mail notices, and then we'll have a period of time for people to protest it. There's a protest period. During that protest period, we can have a planning commission meeting on it, and then after the protest period, we can have a city council meeting. Both of those will be public hearings. We will mail notices for those meetings. So this is not a final decision. This is deciding whether we want to look at this annexation and find out information.
right.
Okay,
Right. It's not about what the layout will be, if it's developed, or anything like that.
No, not
Do
too
we want to
much. We will
consider
look at
annexing
the
the
concept
property?
plan. We'll
Sure.
show you what that's gonna look like, and we'll discuss, like we always do with the petition, the pros and cons. So we'll go through that. I'm just gonna go through my staff report. Basically, they're wanting to annex these 3 parcels that are just east of Foothill at the intersection of 35 and Foothill.
So it's the piece where the little red house is on. 1 and 35.
Yeah. So CD 2003, 2001A, and 2003X. This happens to be 2003X is where we have our well and tank site. These are the 3 parcels that they're looking to annex. They also own this piece here, which is in the city. That one is FT2, that's the parcel number.
So the annexation is just,
These 3 pieces, but I'm gonna bring up another picture that shows what is gonna be happening there in that area with the subdivision. Sorry, the drawings are different sizes, so I'm just gonna zoom in on this area. It's taking a minute for the computer to catch up here. But anyway, you can kind of, I'll start talking and maybe, there we go. Okay, so the road, when we first talked about what used to be formerly known as the Tipton Hill subdivision, now it's Foothills at Francis Gate, the road was gonna come out on 35. But there was gonna be a lot of retaining walls and some things doing that. So the Foothills at Francis Gate talked with the Prescott family, purchased their property, and that's part of the property that we're talking about annexing tonight, and then also this FT2. So, so the access road can change from being onto 35, and will go onto Foothills. So we'll have 2 access roads onto Foothills, and the road aligns a little bit better going that way. Let's see. So what they're planning is 5 1-acre lots on the piece that's in the city. And then they'd have 1 developable lot in the annexation area.
just real quick.
Yeah.
What's the zoning on the piece that's in the city? Are those 5 lots currently allowed under the zoning that's there?
Absolutely. So FT2 is 6.8 acres and it's zoned about 4 acres of it is residential half, 3 acres is Ag 1. So the zoning for that parcel would allow the developer to subdivide it into as many as 10 lots. Okay. When we talked this was something that came up when Jan was the mayor and we negotiated this annexation that's been in the works for a little while. And we negotiated with them that this annexation, instead of building 10 lots here, they will do 5. Plus the one.
Yeah, so,
that's in the other people's area.
I'll reserve my right to speak in the public hearing part.
Well, there's no public hearing, but since you're, the developer here, you can jump up once. Let me finish up my.
You're good, I'm just getting closer.
You're just getting ready. Okay, so, the analysis of whether to accept or reject this petition, I look at the general plan, which sets 2 standards for annexation. First, the development should be encouraged to occur within the existing city boundaries as a first priority. Second, annexation should only be approved based on an overwhelming benefit to the community as a whole. The development requirements for this annexation are limited. Only 1 additional residential lot is added outside the city boundaries. The main benefit of this annexation is that the applicant has agreed to reduce density within the city boundaries on parcel FU2, decreasing the potential demand for city services. Another benefit is that the city's well and tank will be within city boundaries. And I really cannot talk to Scott too. I couldn't think of any drawbacks to this annexation. So my recommendation is just keep in mind that annexation is legislated. The decision to accept or deny the petition is up to the discretion of the city council. If the proposed annexation is consistent with the goals of the general plan and it provides an overwhelming benefit to the community, the petition may be accepted for further consideration. This meeting tonight is not a public hearing, but there will be public hearings later, like I explained. So that's it for now.
And the petitioner's here.
Yeah.
I have one quick question.
Okay.
Are there any issues with the New Washington irrigation, weir gates that's in this annexation property?
There's that, no, it shouldn't be, because originally the road was 1.5 those.
Right.
And So we'll pipe the ditch and stuff through it, so we've been working with them, and this actually works out better for them, because it gets the road away from their, maintenance.
Okay, that was my only concern.
Mayor, one question. Anytime retaining walls comes up in city road, because these roads are gonna be dedicated to the city either way, right? Okay, so I have horror stories on these from one of my other municipalities, 40-foot retaining wall. Resident forgot to, didn't maintain their sprinklers. So there was a leak in one of the valves. And it was not a significant leak, but it was a leak nonetheless. It took the whole wall down. It was a $2 million fix. So anything we can do to not have a city road and a retaining wall, I'm all for it. The cost of maintaining those are not worth it, and they will be a budget buster, and especially if we had a year like we did last year.
Yeah, I would assume that pretty much any of that will be, you know, the retaining. Is there any scenario in which the retaining wall is outside the city right away and not the city's responsibility?
No.
It's part of the road. That's what I'm saying, that's what.
That would take the road over.
And that's my point. I guess.
You're scared me talking about retaining walls.
know of it.
So if for no other reason.
Okay. The petitioner's here, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thanks. Hello, my name is Robert McFadden.
It won't blow up, I don't think.
No bombs placed in this. As you know, I mean, we bought this property, it's been 2 years ago, November. And we have worked diligently with Scott and other powers that be to try to get this to be the most accommodating development for the city. This annexation, like you said, the Prescott piece below, all but the one lot, all of this lot, lot 77, is already in city limits. So we're just annexing the hill itself, which encompasses your tanks. In fact, we graciously agreed at Mr. Kettle's request to pay your annexation fee. So you're saying that yes to your own annexation, which we covered the cost for. One of the reasons that we wanted to buy the Prescott piece was, yes, to avoid 35. We thought it would be much safer to go on to Foothills than it would be to go out, especially at that corner, because that's right where that entrance was originally approved.
Right.
But in buying the Prescott piece, we got rid of the 60-foot easement requirement that we were restricted by, which would have made us have a more, not necessarily dangerous retaining walls, but certainly much more over and highly engineered walls. This way, we now have a much greater ability to slope much further grade. And Scott, we've talked about these grades, and I'm sure we'll have more discussions about them. But we do have the stamp set plans, and we're ready to move forward with as accommodating and pleasant development as you guys could want. And Scott had promised he would never say anything against this. We've been pretty good to work as developers, right? So, anyway, and we will continue to do so. We're just looking to get the project done. We did just get an offer for someone to buy it from us, so we may be exiting and someone else may be taking it over. But that remains to be seen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Scott, does this then eliminate retaining walls or just diminishes?
Yeah, before,
Small.
they have a 60-foot right of way that they cross the Prescott property.
Yeah.
So they cannot build a road width outside of the 60-foot right of way. And so we have steep grades, you got to slope to go further. So we couldn't, so they built retaining walls to leave us stop. So now there'll be some cuts and stuff, but I don't think there's any more retaining walls.
They're small ones. They're just nothing nothing you should be concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, it's all there.
He's a lawyer, he's always.
Anything that we have to maintain is a concern for me, but
Yes.
I like to at least know that we can minimize that liability as much as possible. Okay, any comments, questions, concerns from council?
Last thing I'll just say as I leave, very big concession for us to go to bigger horse property lots. We won't make nearly as much money, but Scott requested it, and we agreed.
So it was more,
So,
Yeah, somebody requested it, we agreed.
yeah.
So I'm just, is that in writing that you agreed, or are you gonna let us annex this and then Ernie change it to 10 lots?
that'll be part of the annexation agreement, is that we spell out this.
Okay.
We'll get that nailed down in the contract.
We're also.
I
we're
just
also-
don't want, not you, but we've been taken by other contractors,
I agree.
going back on their words,
No,
so.
this is the plan we're on.
Perfect.
Good question. Anything else?
Well, that's all I have, I guess.
Well, I'm generally not the guy jumping on annexations, I think this one makes a lot of sense. One, have our taken well in the city's second plan. I think the concessions are nice, especially considering they could not annex those three and still build more.
They can build this exact same thing, but have smaller, have a, maybe go through the center of the property,
Right.
have lots on both sides.
Right. They could double the lots for sure, at least in the flat. At least in the flat.
Yeah.
We probably ought to quit reminding them of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, to me, this makes a lot of sense, and it doesn't feel like we're taking the shorts by doing this, if that makes sense, at least to me. So that's my 2 cents. If there's no other comments or concerns, I'll take a motion.
What do we make a motion on?
To accept the petition.
I'll make a motion that we accept the petition as it's stated
For political transfer.
for Williams and Friends, for,
Except for further review.
Yeah, it's just accept the petition for further study.
okay, yeah. To accept this petition for further study.
Okay, we have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Clayton's a second. Sharon,
Thank you. This is Robert. Aye.
The mayor's aye, Sam?
Aye.
Okay. What's that? Thank you. Next, excuse me, next item is moderate income housing component of Hart Ranch, Hidden Meadows. And does it include Stewart Ranch?
Yes.
So it also includes Stewart Ranch, is that? That's an oversight on my part on that item, but. So it's the moderate income housing component for the Hart, Hidden Meadows, and it actually includes Stewart Ranch.
Hold on a second. Pull up your presentation. You can start talking.
We're gonna give this to
So,
Brad and.
If you recall, 2 weeks ago, we had that special meeting for the EMS thing, EMS contract, and we had some revisions to it. And we came back after the meeting, I took 2 of you aside, I'd already talked to the mayor about it. Talked to the mayor about it, mayor's met with developers about it, I've met with attorneys about it. And the condition comes up, we have the conservation subdivision, and, you know, Mayor, you were there, Shannon was there. I don't believe any of the other councils were there for that, when we created that city code. But the idea behind the city code, it had 2 major purposes. Number 1 was to conserve the rural feel of Francis. New developments coming, we wanted to make sure that we don't lose what Francis is and what everybody loves about it. So when you have a large annexation or a large development, you have to preserve 50% of it. One of the other components to that was if you wanted to build a townhome product, which the city did not have at that time, any multifamily product in the city available for developers to build, didn't have any zones for it. The city council at that time adopted a provision within the conservation subdivision that allowed them to build townhomes so long as the townhome was moderate income housing. Because we have heard for a decade or more that it's too expensive in Francis, our kids can't live here. Have any of you heard that? Anybody heard that?
No, never.
No.
I heard that yesterday.
Heard that yesterday.
My daughter will be back in with me because she can't afford it.
That's getting close to home.
Case in point, case in point.
Yep.
Okay, so that was the reason that, that was one of the reasons that the council at that time decided to adopt a provision that allowed for a townhome product if you were doing it for moderate income housing. And this was adopted in 2018, okay? So 2018, does anybody remember what interest rates were like in 2018? Did anybody buy their house in 2018?
No.
Okay. Were they 7%?
I did.
Were they 7% interest rates?
No.
They're
Actually,
probably
it
about
got pretty low, then we refinanced,
Because
so.
it got even lower.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason this is coming up is because we have two of those. One of them's already started building the townhome product. One of them has tried to market the townhome product. And we've had how many buyers, different buyers that come in on the sewer arrangement?
Wow. Well, unless Ivory decided not to do the townhome product because they didn't like
They couldn't make
the
it
water
pencil.
income part of that. So I think they're trying to sell it, but I haven't heard of anyone.
They tried to, I talked to their attorney, they tried to market it, they've had lots of interest. And as soon as they see the moderate income housing component, they say, thanks, but no thanks for. So, anyway, getting into the reasons, okay, moderate income housing, this is in a nutshell, there's more nuance to this, but we didn't want to get into the nitty gritty and the minutia of what it requires and all of the, the math from the census, the math from Summit County, Summit County Assessor's Office, all of that stuff. We have the information and I can give it to you, but for purposes of discussion, we're going to do in kind of high level generalities. So one of the requirements is in order to qualify as moderate income housing, an individual who makes between 80 and 120% of the area median income for Summit County, and that encompasses all of Summit County. You can spend no more than 33% of your income on housing and utilities. Okay. That is not economically possible to do that and pay for the cost of materials and the labor to build a home. Wages always, follow inflation, right? Wages are the last thing to go up. Who knows that? Who's felt that? Okay, everybody, that's kind of common knowledge that wages are the last thing. So wages obviously have not kept up with the inflationary pressures. Just this week, the last quarter, there was another 7.5%, 8% inflation from year over year from last quarter this time. Whose wages went up 8% from a year ago? Most people's didn't, right? So this is just you probably can't see that. I can't see it, I'm having a hard time. But anyway, this is the slide I was talking about. This takes prices for materials and components for construction of homes. So from December of 2018, that's the baseline, zero. That was the 100% of what they cost. Since that time to June of 2021, so let's see, what is that, 30 months? There was a 25% increase, and we were still in COVID supply chain issues, and they went up higher beyond that. So I don't have the data for that. They didn't have that readily available. But this is the most recent data that I could find in the day and a half that I had before we decided to do a PowerPoint. So anyway, this data, so it's worse than it was, right? It's even higher. So what that means is the consequences of what we've contracted for with Stewart and with Hart. We've reached that situation where it's an economic impossibility. The city of Francis does not have a state mandate to provide moderate income housing, right? That was the council's decision that they wanted to make an effort to help address that. One of the other things that they did was create a cottage zone. That was similar, that was close in time, was it not, Katie? Cottage zone came.
It was before I started working here, but I think it was similar,
It was,
kind of close, yeah.
I'd have to look it up, but they were fairly close in time. And so that is another effort to reduce the cost of housing and create more of a starter home type situation in the city. Anyway, everybody knows the economic challenges there are: housing affordability, interest rates on top of that. Can you go to the next slide.
Sure.
Keep going. So interest rates were less than 3% at one point. That was in 2019, 2020. Cost of materials and labor, we have, so that's wrong. Economic impossibility to comply with what's as it's written. So each unit deed restricted costs loses approximately $100,000 minimum, and that is projected. I think Rusty has actually different numbers that say it costs him more if he deed restricts that house and makes it meet the requirements to sell it at a rate. He's more close to between $150,000 and $200,000 per unit. And so loss in order to make it work, right?
Right.
Number of other cities. So Ivory, this is the South Jordan component, South Jordan development. When South Jordan has what's called economic development zones. It was part of the Trump tax cut. And what they did when they created these economic development zones, they were zones that needed redevelopment. And in those, they were able to set a base tax at what they were currently producing. And then developers would get discounts and tax benefits from development dollars they put in there. They would get tax credits for doing that. And then the difference of what those tax credits were and the new tax that came in was called tax increment. The tax increment went in, and a certain percentage of that, if you have one of these zones, required the city to collect that, put it in a fund to offset costs to create moderate income housing. City of Francis isn't big enough to qualify for any of that. So anyway, South Jordan did that, and for each unit of moderate income housing they gave Ivory, I think it was $150,000 for each unit of moderate income housing that they created. They gave them $150,000 each unit to offset the cost of that. So we didn't do that. We don't have that kind of money in Francis. We never offered that. That wasn't a possibility. But we did try to get moderate income housing, and we have it built in to the annexation agreement. We have it built into the master plans for ranches. We have it built into the to the plats in Hart. Nothing is, the final stuff in final plats for Hidden Meadows haven't been signed. The development agreement hasn't been signed, so we're trying to come up with a solution that helps create a possibility of getting something rather than nothing. So, so no investors are gonna, and you know, oftentimes investors in development are banks. Sometimes they're hard money loans. Sometimes they're private individuals that have money that have, you know, worked with the developer in the past and made money on their projects. So anyway, the issue with these particular townhome products is that you can't make them pencil with this moderate income housing component definition that we have in our code. Because of the size of Francis, we're not required to comply with state mandates for moderate income housing, because we just don't reach that level yet. Anyway, so the question becomes, what do we do? So, Katie, can you go to that?
Sure.
Keep going. Okay, this is an example, this is a real world example of options that developers can do. And I think this helps get us closer. I don't know that it gets us to that 80 to 120. Okay, so this is a real world example that's happening right now. This is in Wasatch County. I did not know a loan officer that was doing a deal in Eastern Southern County that I could use, but I know a loan officer is doing a deal in Heber, but it illustrates the point. So right now, on September 5th, the interest rate, if you locked in on September 5th, was 7.125%. This is for a purchase price, or excuse me, a loan price of $665,000. Okay, principal and interest on that particular project, without the buy down, is $4,480.23. That's the mortgage payment for that. You're already outside of that 80 to 120, which is that mortgage payment. That is nowhere near 30% to cover your mortgage. That doesn't include any mortgage insurance, and it also doesn't include any utilities, which would be on top of that. So you're probably in the range of $5,400 in that range of what it would cost to buy that if it were here in Francis and a $665 purchase price or a loan price. So what builders are doing right now in many places are offering, it's a 2-1 buy down. And this probably is driving you crazy when you hear this, but anyway, this was something that one of the attorneys involved had mentioned, offered as a developer incentive that they're trying to do to help ease the burden. Most economists right now believe that these are not sustainable, the interest rates right now. And there's going to be some correction with interest rates and in the economy, potentially a recession. And then in the next 2 to 3 years, there's going to be a lower interest rate. So they're trying to offer an incentive for people to buy today, get them into a product that they can manage and they can live and they can qualify for with a lower cost, right, monthly payment. So these 2-1 buy downs provide an option to get it lower. For the first year, the 2-1 buy down is a 2% buy down. The developer is paying about $15,000 out of their own pocket, $15,120. And that buys the interest for the first year 2% lower, and for the second year 1% lower. And that gets their first year's payment with principal and interest only. It doesn't include mortgage insurance, doesn't include utilities, from $44.80 down to $36.20. So you're about $820 less with developer incentives. And this is one that Hidden Meadows is talking about offering for the moderate income designated units. The second year, when there's enough interest paid in that $15,000, that they're getting their payment for the second year will be $4,000 instead of $4,400. So first year it's $840, second year it's $420. That's less for those time periods. And what that does, what the idea behind that is, somewhere in that time they'll be able to refinance it to a lower interest rate to keep it low. Anyway, that's what a lot of developers are doing right now to incentivize people to get into something, rather than having them wait for interest rates to get better for prices to go down. Let's see. So that's just an example of challenges right now. How do we go next, Katie?
It's hard to see it there, so hold on, let me drive it.
There's also a 3-2-1 buy down too.
Yeah, some lenders are offering even different ones. It just depends on
It costs the
builder more.
builder.
Yeah. Okay, so we have several options before us, that we can do. There's nothing is actually required that we have to do, right? We can just wait. We can do nothing. And what happens if we do nothing is they won't get built. Right? Like you just won't get a townhome product. So regardless of how much the townhome product costs, it is cheaper than the single family home, right? There's economies of scale that happen when you build a townhome product. You've got shared walls, you've got shared landscaping, you've got shared foundations. It's just cheaper to build 4 units than it is to build 4 individual units that are, together. For example, like the one in Hart Crossing. I'm calling it Hart Ranch, it's Hart Crossing. Anyway, so the city council we just like direction so we know which direction you want to go. Option 1, we could easily resolve this and make it pencil for developers by revising our definition of moderate income, because that's what it's tied to in the development agreements, and it's tied to that in the annexation agreements. Moderate income, we can change the percentage of area median income to reflect what you can actually get a loan for, right? So that's an easy, simple way. Does the city have to do it? No, it doesn't have to do it. Okay, option 2. We can amend all the agreements and reduce the number of units that would be deed restricted. That would require them to be an incentive saying, hey, we'd rather have some deed restricted that you have to sell at a lower rate, but we'll allow you to make money on the other ones in order to offset the cost. And hopefully you can make a pencil on the units.
I see these two as going like 1 and 2 together, because I feel like we changed the code, and at least some of the agreements pull back to that code. They say you have to follow what's in the code.
Right.
In the case of Hart, it's a little bit different. It doesn't go back to the code.
Right, it's actual numbers.
Right, but I feel like 1 and 2 would actually go together.
Well, and we could do a combination, right? So, number 3. Eliminate the townhome component altogether. Recognize that you can't build that. It would require the developers, we'd have to amend the code and amend agreements on that as well. That's probably the most complex of all of them. It's, you would get rid of the moderate income housing component altogether, the conservation subdivision. And we wouldn't run into this problem again in the foreseeable future, but you wouldn't have a townhome product available to developers in that. There's other options you could do outside of that to create a townhome, you know, a multifamily component, multifamily zone. If Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't the only multifamily option the city has right now is within the conservation subdivision bonus density thing, right?
No, we actually have a multifamily zone, but the only place that's zoned in the city for that is at the Francis Commons development.
It's under,
And they're doing 56 townhomes. It's the
Okay.
one off Scenic Heights over here.
okay.
Yeah.
So we do have that, but we don't have any zone places for it. So we already have a zone, so that's.
Just have that one place that's zoned for it.
Yeah. There's no other places are zoned. The other thing we do is just not do anything. And like we talked about at the beginning of this slide is that if we don't do anything, we've got potentially arguably one developer that's arguably in violation. There are some defenses that they have. Some would call them an escape clause. I don't know that I go that far, but
That's a stretch.
one potentially calls it that one. Anyway, we're not going to get into too deep into that, but we can just wait it out and see what happens. We're not required to do anything. One of the, we talked about potentially combining this conversation with some of the other things, but there's some of the other issues with our water infrastructure, just because they're both involved, you know, in Meadows and Hurt Ranch and, you know, and Stewart Ranch eventually would also be involved in that, but.
The real issue is hard. We already have some of this townhome product built. And we realized they were not being sold at the correct price.
Yeah,
And so-
they didn't meet the definition that's required in the contract. So that's the real issue.
The option 4 works for
The majority,
maybe Stewart, maybe Hidden Meadows, but really doesn't work for Hart,
with the part that apartment's already built.
right?
Now, some would say, well, are we doing a favor for developers? I guess, you could say that. I don't know that that's, I don't feel this is doing a favor for anybody. I don't think we contemplated this when we entered into those agreements. I don't think, and I know Hart didn't contemplate that. I know that Meadows didn't contemplate it. I know Stewart Ranches didn't contemplate it. We've seen consequences of these changes in the industry. We've seen developers request, that paid for building permits, didn't ever break ground on them, and then came back begging and pleading, please give us a refund, which portions of it we're required to do, right? So you guys had to approve that a couple months ago. So are we doing a favor? Some would say that. I think that's short-sighted. I think what we would be doing is recognizing that there are challenges that they didn't create, that we didn't create. It's a recognition of market forces that we are where we are. And it's an opportunity to say, for the council to weigh in and say, this is what we'd like to see. Yes, we like the townhome product. We're not required to do the moderate income housing. We recognize that. But regardless of where prices are going, a townhome is cheaper than a single family home. No matter how you look at it, similarly sized, it just is. So that's a recognition, and it gets us somewhere, and it doesn't create a runaway ranch and undeveloped, unfinished, you know, development that just sits there, an unfinished portion of the development. Maybe that's okay. Maybe the council's okay with that. But what we'd like from you tonight is just, you know, help us get an understanding of where the council would like us to go with this. Do you want to think on it? Do you want to come back next month after that? This is a lot to digest and think about. Maybe that's the answer, is think about it, you know, and let's come back, you know, next month and see if we can get some direction, because I know there's consequences either way on this. There's consequences of potential unbuilt developments, unbuilt subdivisions. There's consequences of, you know, just not getting built. There's consequences of, you know, interestingly enough, one of the things that came out of one of the meetings we had with the developers is similar products, similar size units, similar finishes, 10 minutes, closer to Highway 40, and there's, what was it, an $80,000 to $100,000 difference?
Which one was that, Friday?
Black Rock area.
Black
Rock. Yeah.
Got it, I don't know what's the price in there.
Yeah, it was significant. I don't remember what it was.
But it was finished, and, and I'm not doing it, I'm not here, I mean, I represent the city. What you this council decides to do, we'll do it, right? It's not an our decision, it's here's the factors that I think are important to consider. We just need you to let us know, sometime in the near term, how you want us to.
Before we open it for discussion with the council, I guess the council is closed, but, is there anything that we need to consider as far as, legal issues that may arise from doing nothing, doing something, changing? Are there, I guess my concern would be if we try to hold, while I know we have legal standing to hold a developer to what we agreed upon before, if that's completely and obviously not feasible, is there some
So this is
legal
getting
problem we
into,
could get ourselves into?
let me stop you there. This is getting into potential closed session and stuff. That, I don't think it would be wise to discuss these types of issues over the public, in the public meeting. Just because I don't want to give away any strategy or any sort of, my thinking or create issues where they're not necessary.
Right, no, I agree.
But is there potential issues? Sure.
And I feel like, there might be one solution that works for Hart, Hidden Meadows, Stewart's, and anything going forward. But I also think that there might be a different solution for Hart than there is for anything else. Because the development agreement for Hart has different language in it. And so, talking with Rusty about some options for him to be in compliance with his obligations. Like Brad talked about, there's buying down the interest rate, then he can get, into the rates that the Economic Development Department in the county has given us that they should be in for that AMI. That would be an option that potentially could get him into compliance. He's willing to do it for the units that are in the center of the townhomes, but not on the end caps. It costs him about 20
to 40.
20 to 40 for each one to buy that down. So then with that, we're only getting half of the units that we agreed to, but we're getting them in the range that they're supposed to be.
And it makes you get something rather than wait to see if you get something sometime.
Right.
And then I think with amending the code, that really works for every other situation besides Hart. And with that, I would like to keep it deed restricted because I feel like that is the only way to keep affordable housing affordable for any kind of long-term.
Yeah.
And there's ways that we can write that code or that restriction to make sure that it's like job codes that are local and
More enforceable.
More enforceable.
Yes.
But it really isn't realistic, in talking with the economic development director, for us to require that 100% of those units be deed restricted. It's more like 10%. It's what, 10 to 20 is what Summit County.
It was possible.
said they would possibly
It was possible
require.
in 2018 with the interest rates then and up to 2020.
Well, I think that actually I was in on a lot of those discussions, originally when those developments were approved, and no one balked at doing that.
Right.
Everyone readily agreed to meeting those standards. Then,
Yes.
and so I guess what I'm saying is that speaks to their and our own,
Inability to predict.
yeah, we just couldn't predict it, and so no one considered
This was pre-COVID.
the chance that this would happen and that we would be in the situation we are today. Because I think had we been in this situation during the discussion of development, none of those concessions would have been made.
Right. They would have opted not to do
Just think
the
about that.
townhome product at all.
Right.
That's what they would, and it just doesn't pencil.
Right, but when talking with Rusty, we talked about restricting, not 100%, but 10%, maybe 20. He felt like that was workable, that would be workable for him, and it's also a win for us because we do have some affordable housing that would be continuing for some time in the future.
Yeah. All right, any questions, comments, concerns, council?
So my concern is, our original idea, obviously I was a part of it, to do the moderate income housing. Are we letting this dictate that vision? And, we're changing what our original goal was because of current events. I also don't like us kind of having to catch a developer selling stuff more. And then are just letting them change the goalposts. And by letting them, is that dictating the vision we have? Because the reason why we're all here right now is because we're representing the people that live here and their goals and their desires. And yeah, that's my main thing is, by, I guess, revising this, we're changing the original impetus we had for the modern income housing. Yeah, that's my main question. Because we're all in it. But is Francis going to take a hit because the developers are? Because they're making money. But we live here, people live here. That's my take.
Well, one thing to consider on that, and I'm not, everybody lives in somewhere, right?
Yep.
So at some point, some developer build a house, maybe you built your own, I don't know, but I know the house I live in, a developer built it, and I'm certain he made money on it, which I don't know if that's, and I think in the last, I don't know, we live in a capitalist, kind of economy where you wouldn't build a house if you couldn't make money on it, right? And the builders that built houses and didn't make money on them aren't builders anymore. So I think that creates and I'm not taking a builder's side here, but it's just a recognition that we all live in homes that at some point somebody made money off of. So I don't know that that's kind of the measuring stick for whether we should approve it or not. It's whether it meets with our city code, and whether it meets with our city vision, whether it meets with, nobody's saying developers don't make money, but we have developers saying we can't make money on these and therefore they won't get built. I mean, that's the situation, is that the original intent of the agreement in the contracts is not possible. No bank will, here's what we gotta build, let me show you what it is. We're not touching it, we're not lending any money. Sorry.
Yeah, but do I go to my neighbor and say, hey, your vision that I'm representing?
Yeah.
I'm gonna change that because I want Rusty Register to make more money, or want him to not lose money, right?
Well, it's really not, that's not even the question at this point, it's whether or not these get built or not.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it
If
comes
they
down
don't
to.
make money, they won't build them.
Okay, if they get built, who buys them?
I mean, you could do nothing, right? We said that was an
That's an
option. You can do absolutely nothing, with respect to this, and you won't get as you're saying, you won't get the moderate income housing, right? You won't get any, right? There's an opportunity to revise it, get some, but not get all, and make it less of a burden. But like I said, I agree, like in the South Jordan one, they're getting $150,000 per unit, from the city, from that tax increment difference, right? That, in order to reduce the cost of those and make them pencil, right? So it's not, but we don't have that money, so it's not an option to do that,
Right.
right?
So if we make that change, we're still pushing out people, the whole reason we wanted moderate income housing, and we're just making it so other people can move in, right? So they can build these homes. We're making it California,
Yeah.
more people
So-
from California can afford it, but
Yeah.
is it still pushing out the people we wanted to originally?
Well, it just won't make them build, right?
Well, it doesn't matter anyway, they're not affordable to the people that we want them for, right? Because in my mind, the whole purpose of doing this is so Shannon's daughter, so for whoever's kid that grew up here and wants to stay here. That's like my number one priority is those types of people, because that's me. And that was me, right? So, yeah, that's why we set this up back at a time when it was a lot easier for that to work for those people. And now, yeah, everybody's interested, they want to build these townhomes because they're cheaper to build, they can make a little more money on them. We want to let them build these townhomes because people like Shannon's daughter can maybe afford it. And now, 2 years, 3 years down the road, sorry, it's not feasible. Hey, I'm hurting, I need you to change this for me. We're not changing that for the people that we built these for in the first place, though. That's how I feel. It's like, okay, I'm hurting, you can do something for me, please do it. These other people are hurting that we wanted these homes for, but you can't do anything for them, and too bad, we just won't build them. Okay, well, they're not gonna move into them whether we build them or not. They're either not there and they can't move into them, or they're there and they can't afford to move into them.
Except for the deed restricted units. That's why.
And that's what, 1 out of every 10?
Maybe, yeah.
Well, even with the deed restriction, so let's just say that it stays exactly as it is and they build those. What's the 120% of the median income right now?
It's, hold on, let's pull that out.
I mean, I don't know that I would qualify for those suckers.
So, the
Census-
county looked at it and they said, it depends on the size of the unit.
Right.
Because then they can say how many household members are in there. So for a 3-bedroom, the top price at the 120% MI would be $569,000, and the 4-bedroom would be $614,000. They were on the market, the 3-bedrooms are on the market for $730,000, and the 4-bedrooms were on the market for $830,000, and they're still on the market for that price.
Look, I've said
That's why-
this before, Rusty gets caught, and then we have to tell him, hey, man,
Yeah.
you're doing this, you agreed not to do this, you're doing, oh, well, I'll come up with an excuse.
If we didn't
Oh,
actually,
there,
what would happen?
Well,
Okay,
they're
that's
not,
just a
Rusty's
Rusty
not alone.
problem. It's not.
No, I
just a Rusty
understand
problem.
that, but this is where we found it, right?
Yes.
Right.
Whether it's the same
Yeah, 'cause he's
situation
selling
or
them for
not,
more.
that's the
Okay.
fact that we found it again.
In fairness, he was measuring it differently. He thought he was measuring it in a way that was the right way, and
It was
that's
a
what he
compliant.
said to me. I'm not gonna say that I 100%
Well, his
believe what he
numbers,
said.
his numbers came from a bank.
From FHA,
FHA, yeah.
but
Federal
talking to
government
the,
lender.
yeah, and talking to the county economic development director, he said, well, the FHA loans don't go just to moderate income levels. You can qualify for an FHA loan if you make more than moderate income, so that's why those levels aren't making sense. Rusty claims that he thought he was doing the right thing. I was concerned and reached out to the county and got the numbers that they thought should be.
I don't necessarily want to make this about Hart Crossing.
Right,
It's
it's not just.
It's not my intention.
But it is the most like
Right,
pressing
because they're
one.
already built.
Right.
Well, I do think the code needs to be amended anyway, and to remove that moderate income housing component.
I'm fine waiting it out a couple of years in my opinion, but
I agree.
I mean, this isn't my wheelhouse, this isn't something I study all the time, so maybe I don't have all the information to make a extremely intelligent and educated decision, so I would prefer to have time to think about this, but my initial reaction is wait it out. Like, I get everybody's hurting, so why should I be super concerned about development, because I think we have too much development as it is, so, whether that's just my personal feelings getting in the way of a smart decision, maybe give me some time to figure that out. But that's what I would prefer. More time to think about it, but right off the top, like, first impression, nah, do nothing. That's where I'm at today.
So there's nothing wrong with waiting.
And
There's absolutely nothing wrong with waiting. We can do that.
Well, we have to.
We may not wanna wait.
We have to deal with
Market.
the one
So
elephant.
what?
We do have to deal with that.
Yeah.
Um,
But do we have to do it right now, right?
no, I don't think we have to do it tonight.
maybe the best option is just say, yeah, Rusty, you reduce the buy down interest rate that could solve the problem right now. For those ones.
Can I, how many has he built?
4.
8.
Oh, we delayed.
Well,
4 with 2 and
4 are done, 2 are sold, 2 are sold on one of them, and then there's 2 in the middle that are still on the market. He's in the middle of building 4 more, it's almost done.
Isn't that all of them?
Now there's 16.
Oh, there's 16, okay, so there's 8
So
more.
he's halfway.
Okay.
So I agree, we do have to deal with that one because it's existing. But I don't think there's any pressure to deal with it tonight. We can certainly take a step back, think about it, look it over, consider all of the options. I think that's wise. I don't think there's any reason to rush into this. And I'm not opposed to waiting it out and seeing what happens either necessarily. My only major concern with waiting is that we end up with a problem where a development just sits and sits and sits and sits and gets sold 5 or 6 or 8 times, or who knows? And then we end up like,
We don't want to go around.
that really concerns
He
me.
sold 2 already,
Yeah.
but was he in compliance with?
No.
So he was out of compliance selling those 2,
Yes, in my opinion, he was.
market rate.
Yeah.
That doesn't put us in any financial straits as a city, just Rusty.
No, we could, in our contract, we could, I know Brad doesn't
I'd
want
rather
to
not
cross
get
this
into that.
bridge.
No, I don't want to observe any, I just want to make sure that we're okay. Now, the other
We haven't
2,
breached any agreement.
okay,
There's no argument that we breached any.
okay, perfect.
We
The other
have
2
not.
now, he
The city
wants
has
to.
not reached.
Okay. He's agreed to do a 2-1 or a 3-2-1.
He's offered that.
He's offered that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Something else.
And then,
that-
but the other
That's-
4,
That's only a temporary solution.
Yeah,
right?
That's correct. I agree.
Because that's not deed restricting those units.
No,
That's just
but they don't have
comply.
to be, part does not have to be deed restricted.
Okay,
Part is not deed
just
restricted.
the original sales price.
The buyer has to still qualify for the total
Agreed.
30-year loan.
That's, yeah.
They still have
If he's
to
agreed to
qualify.
that, and if he has buyers, they have to still qualify.
That is a temporary fix, but I still don't think it'd be,
That doesn't make it.
you still have to qualify at the full rate,
Yeah,
right?
it gives
Yeah.
people 2 years of a reduction.
Right. And realistically, I don't know that 2 years is gonna help anybody, to be honest. I don't see the interest rate. I'm not an economist, but
No, it's not a permanent buy down.
No, it's just
No,
one,
no.
2.
It's a
2, 2-1.
See, and
The
then you're
permanent
just,
buy downs are cost
here, I'll
prohibitive.
do this for this many years,
What-
and then
what were
it's
his
yours,
fees?
you take over.
When I got interested, it sounded like it was.
Well, we still
Oh,
have
Years 3.
He's 90% complete on the next 4.
I don't know how far.
Katie, is he like 90% complete on the next 4?
I'm not really sure exactly. I walk by there all the time. I mean, I know he's gonna try to get them on the market before we hit winter, so,
But
yeah.
in compliance with what he's supposed to be doing, is he still trying to get market price
We're trying to have a resolution before then.
before that? Gotcha.
Yeah, we would like to work this out before they hit the market, but keep in mind, we do have 2 on the market right now. So if we wanna do something before they sell, like, I need to push you, we do have time,
I
but.
kind of agree with
Something
Clayton.
could happen.
I'd like to set
And I,
tonight, I don't like to make a decision tonight, I'd like to wait and maybe resolve it next month.
I think that's okay.
let me just run this by you. So Runway Ranch is a mess, and it's ugly, and I hate driving by there every time. But with these other developments, it's in the conservation subdivision, they're not gonna let it look that ugly because they already have other homes they're selling. So if we wait, you know what I mean, it's not gonna be that ugly. Does that make sense?
There's
That
only
one little
one
part,
phase, Yeah.
Yeah, but there's
Yeah.
one problem with that, and that's that our code requires that the moderate income housing be built ratably with the other housing. So that means that they're supposed to be building those units, which is what they've been doing in Hart, along with the full price units,
Okay.
kind of at the same rate. Stewart's is gonna be in trouble on that pretty soon.
they're already in trouble, they're selling houses out there already,
Yeah.
getting mail for people out there, so.
So they can't just leave the town phase and be in compliance exactly either.
Okay. All right.
I don't have a problem not going along to get along. I don't mind being a bump in the road.
Yeah,
But that's just
let's wait. My vote would be to wait on it, except the ones that are already getting built, let's
Well, I think
do
that's
executive
executive
session.
It's gonna be a different solution
The-
anyway.
Well, the challenge is that, the challenge is our hand is kind of forced, because we've got to treat like individuals the same way.
Well, except for that, his contract is different. Our contract is different than the other contracts.
As his is, don't have to be deed restricted.
They don't. They just said that he had to be selling to someone in the 120% of AMI. The wording is a little different. It's in the Dropbox, but anyway, I'm not gonna pull it up.
But either way, we don't have to solve the problem tonight.
But ASAP.
The Hart one is a little more pressing. I'm not
It is
gonna say it has to be
definitely
done tonight,
I
but that's
agree.
more pressing because we haven't found someone.
I agree. I think that
The
needs
other
to,
ones definitely can be pushed out a little bit.
I think that the Hart ranch needs to be addressed no later than next meeting. Whether that's, we do nothing, whether that's, we do something, I'm not saying one way or the other. What I'm saying is we have to address that by next meeting, or else we're gonna be caught flat-footed and have some more problems. In my opinion, I think I have no problem holding off for another month and thinking about it, and working through the problems. I don't have a problem, like Clayton says, being a bump in the road either, but I think we better also just make sure that we're moving to some solution at some point.
Just a clarification, you're saying he has 16 to build total. Are all 16 of those deed restricted? And our
None
None of them at Hart are deed restricted.
of them.
None of them.
Zero at Hart are deed restricted. He, in my opinion, snaked out of that.
Got it.
Brad would probably disagree with me, but, he didn't have that obligation in the Hart development agreement.
But the issue then is he's not meeting the moderate income definition.
That's right.
Okay,
Selling them.
now I got it.
Yes.
Now I got it.
That's right.
How many of those 16 in his agreement does he have to meet the moderate income?
16.
All of them.
16.
Oh, that's an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Big issue.
So we're already in violation of 2, and there's 2 on the market that are in violation that haven't sold yet.
Well, they're not in violation until it's.
Right.
Right.
But at least.
But are they not in violation because he hasn't listed for more?
Well, I guess he.
Is that be a loophole
You
or?
could change, you could change the price.
Okay. Okay.
But one of our options then is to say, we could reduce the number from 16 to some other number for him, or are we doing that in our code?
So the agreements in place are locked in, right? So if we amend the code, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect anything already in contract.
Got
It affects stuff going forward.
That's just for the Hart though, the Hidden Meadows, and I didn't quote Stewart's, but at least Hidden Meadows, it points back to our code. So if we change our code, then we might not have to amend it.
That's true.
Understood. Okay, so I think at this point, the thought is that we hold off on making a decision until at least next meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that. Anything else on that issue before we move on?
No, we're waiting to bring that before we cancel it, until there's some other developments arising on that first irrigation component to Hart and Hidden.
Okay, we can consider that.
But that affects, water infrastructure, well, all that stuff.
Is that part of Hart or part of Hidden Meadows?
Yes.
Got it.
And also part of avoid July. Reoccurrence of July,
Definitely part of that.
where we had only one well.
Okay, so we'll just hold this, decision until.
Can I ask you a question, maybe way out of turn or out of sequence?
Sure.
The sewer lift station in that area, or on that corner?
Yeah.
Is that supposed to be upgraded in Hart's development or Hidden Meadows?
Hearts doesn't tie up.
It's not. Is it the Hidden Meadows then, is when that was supposed to be upgraded?
Yes, we're working on that.
Okay. You are aware of
Yeah.
the issue we have?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's always fun in grants.
It's always fun here.
I have to get my rubber boots out, bud.
It's bad.
You know things have gone south then, huh?
That's why we hate lift stations.
I knew when I pulled up, things had gone south.
That's exactly what Scott said. That's exactly why we hate lift stations.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and hold that decision until later, and we'll move to item E. I think you can be dismissed, sir.
No, totally signs this.
Okay,
I think you've got a title for it.
you're sure.
Yes.
We have to make a motion to table it, or
I don't think so.
move it on?
It's just a
Discussion.
discussion item.
We'll bring it back.
All right,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you. All right, the next item is item E, Mayor Pro Tem. When Jan was the mayor, we had that set up and he had me designated as the Mayor Pro Tem. I think it's a good idea, good practice, so that in the mayor's absence, there's someone who can step in and basically have the authority and ability to operate things in the mayor's absence. So I would like to have that set up here now. My personal feeling is I would like to ask and or nominate, I'm not sure how this goes for sure, I think we just gotta vote on it. But my thought is I would like to have Sam be the Mayor Pro Tem. Certainly we can have a discussion and before we have a vote, but that's kind of my thought. If there's any questions, concerns, now's your chance.
No, I agree, I think Sam would be the best.
I would just say that I'm open for anybody else to step in if they want to, but I'd be more than happy to help.
Okay, anything else? If not, I move that we appoint Sam Hunter as Mayor Pro Tem.
Second, yeah.
Okay, so it's been moved by the mayor, seconded by Clayton. Shannon,
Aye.
Clayton,
Aye.
Mayor's aye, Sam.
Can I abstain?
Sure. Clayton.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That's that. Okay, next item, I think, is this also okay? Thanks, Brad. Rep grant?
Yep. Okay, so it is, we're in the middle of another grant cycle for the Recreation Arts and Parks Recreation Grant. Last year, we got money to do this playground that's out here. So this year, the prior years, we had money to work on the, notice the new concrete sidewalk and the wood chips around the other park back there, and then the bike park. Check that out, a lot has been happening out there if you haven't seen it. So that's coming along. We have the restrooms delivered today, all of that was from grant money. So, time for us to decide what we want to ask for money. My thought, I talked to Jeremy about this, is that we get the money to finish the Wild Willow Park. So right now we have enough money to build the 2 pump tracks, the restrooms in, we're gonna have a parking lot that's gravel. We have this perimeter trail, we have all the money for that, but we do still need more money, most of it for this major play area, the trees and landscaping. We would like to asphalt the parking lot. That's pretty much what we need money for, in my opinion, so that's what I would like to request the grant funding for, but it's definitely a council decision, so if you all have other ideas, then we can look at that.
This other part by the rodeo grounds, like benches and shade, is that already?
Yeah, so we're looking at buying some shade shelters, for that one. We're not gonna do the shade sales anymore because found out those are actually a lot more than what we initially estimated. So we're gonna do some of the shelters that have picnic tables under them. We'll buy a couple of them for out here. We'll each have 2 picnic tables under them. We ordered tables and benches already for this park.
So we don't need extra money for
Grant money
that.
I don't think we need the grant money for this park. I know that, Byron was the mayor, he wanted to get lights on the soccer field out here. So when we applied for that bond, they had all that money a few years ago. We did put that in there, but we didn't get enough money from the bonds to do the lights. And so in our priority list, the lights were not at the top of that.
I put this above that too, we're getting this part finished out. So if that's gonna take all the money, most money, whatever, that's fine.
There's not as much money this year as there was in the past.
There's not as much, well, I think they have more than they did last year. And last year, they, didn't get enough requests to spend all their money. So, yeah.
Actually, there was less money this year than last year. So. Go big or go home.
I think there's more this year, but it doesn't matter. It's pretty similar.
That's
to
for all of
last
us for
year.
this part.
Yeah. So that's what I'm planning on. I just want to make sure that's good with the council.
I think so.
That sounds good.
Go big.
I have a quick question, though, just about the park. Like, do we approve any, like, layout of the playground, or is it just, hey, we're putting a playground here and somebody else designed it?
So,
The only issue I have or question is the pollinator garden is right next to where you eat. So we're gonna be like sticking people right next to a bunch of bees. That's the only question
no,
I
they're gonna be
have.
over on the flowers. They're not gonna come over to the picnic.
I would hope not.
No, that's something we can look at. We hired a landscape architecture firm to come up with this. We got an estimate from them on how much it would cost to get the construction plans to build this. So, there's definitely some tweaks we could make there. The planning commission did approve the landscape plan for this park already.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that we can't make a few changes.
That's the beauty.
You do the pollination thing to the other side.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of sitting in this chair is you get to make all the suggestions you want.
Yeah, but nobody listened to them.
Well, I don't want to sit in any kind of listening.
So you're just gonna be, we'll support you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Good plan.
Okay.
Good catch, I didn't even catch that.
Go forth and
Well,
come.
my kid's got to do a wasp nest this Sunday, so that's
Oh.
on my mind.
Yeah.
All right. Frontier Days. Clearly this is a real preliminary as far as anything goes, as far as final numbers and all that stuff goes. But before we get too far into that discussion, I just want to express my thanks to everyone. It's a freaking job to put that thing on. And that includes staff, it includes me, it includes all of you guys. It takes a lot of people, it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of stress to deal with that whole celebration. I know some of you felt the stress more than others, but it does not go unnoticed, at least by me. And I appreciate the fact that the council was highly involved, and there's been several years in the past where the council's been less involved, and it's nice to have a large involvement from the council from my perspective. So I know there were some stressors, I know there's some issues here and there, but overall we had a successful, I think, weekend. And again, I appreciate all the volunteers, I appreciate all the council and staff. It takes a lot of work to do, so thank you. And other than that, we can move forward in that discussion. Do we have any numbers at all?
I'm just looking those.
Okay, I figured as much. So,
Do you want me to show the survey results?
yeah, let's talk about the survey results.
So we did our little 3-question survey. The first question we asked was, where do you live? I was actually surprised by this. Most people said they were from Utah, but not in Summit County. So that's really good information that we have a lot of people coming from outside the county. That's gonna help us get more of that restaurant tax grant money, having this number.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, this is helpful for some of that stuff.
Absolutely, that's why we did it. So.
Well, we're in the shack, you can almost tell, because almost everybody that comes up drives. I had no idea who this person is.
Right.
right?
We even have them outside of Utah.
Yeah, we even had, 8-ish% from outside Utah.
My wife's family, actually, they had a few people come a year or so ago. And now, her step side of the family, so to speak, is a huge family. Anyway, long story short, we had a couple come from out of state a year or two ago. Now it's their like tradition that they all come for that weekend. So it may be that it's all them. It's a significant number, and they're from like Arizona. They come from all over the place because they think this is just the neatest thing ever.
Well,
So,
it
anyway,
is, these days.
that's right. So anyway, that's at least some of where the out of state comes from.
What?
I don't suppose it really matters. We have some.
I talked to 4 or 5 from
Sorry.
a couple of my clients in California who described what it was. They say they're coming next year.
Oh, good. Yeah, we like it.
Yeah, so.
Sorry, anyway, sidebar.
Good information. Next question was, how did you hear about this event? And a lot of people hear about from word of mouth, almost all of them. This is important because we spent a lot of money on radio advertising this year, and that was actually the smallest percent of people that said they heard about it from radio. So maybe that's something we want to rethink in the future.
Yeah, I would spend that money somewhere else.
Yeah, I know that Canvas requested the restaurant tax grant money to pay for awards or prizes, so I don't know why we couldn't.
And we may be able to do that, and if we can,
Yeah.
it's worth considering. I know that, and it doesn't have to be necessarily for the rodeo, but that is something that we have to add into the rodeo contract every year, is added money. That's a requirement by the RMPRA that you have a certain amount. I'm told that if you can increase that, oftentimes that creates, more incentive to have more participants. We have a pretty darn good rodeo anyway, but anyway, just things to think about. I think that does help.
Or maybe like the higher quality, like better participants you're gonna get.
Right, yes.
The higher
For
quality.
sure.
Yeah.
Did
More
anyone
competitive.
specify other?
Our client's gonna be next
Did
year.
anyone specify other?
Yeah, so I did a little word cloud on that because I was curious what people said. So a lot of people just said they have family in the area, they come every year, kind of like Jenny's family. They've just grown up doing this, it's like a tradition for them, so that's what a lot of people are saying.
I'm happy to see that actually, because for me, that's one of the main components of keeping this alive is the tradition, so that's cool.
Next question was, what is your favorite event? And by and large, the rodeo stole the show. It was like 89%, 87 plus some, said that was, their favorite thing about Country Days is the rodeo. And then everything else was just like 5% or less. The Brent Hill concert, the junior rodeo, vendor booths, live music, movie night, talent show, other. Definitely not as popular as the rodeo.
All right, that's just the favorite, right? Not like, do you like this or not like this?
Yeah. And so one conversation we had in the office looking at this result is maybe we think about simplifying Frontier Days, because we're always trying to get people in for the vendor booths and trying so hard to get the live music going on Saturday and Monday. And, it's like we keep trying to get it to work. I don't know that it's obviously not the favorite activity, and it seemed like it's always hard to get people out here for it, for whatever reason, maybe because Swiss Days is going on for the same kind of thing. So if we wanted to simplify Frontier Days, that might be a good way to do it, is to eliminate some of the activities during the day on Saturday and Monday. I personally love the junior rodeo. I love the Brent Hill concert. The movie night is not really a big deal for us to put that up, and I think it's a good activity. But some of the other stuff, it just takes a lot of work. It requires a lot of volunteers, and then people really just love the rodeo. So, something to think about for the future.
Okay, maybe this is blasphemy, but is there a way to take it down to like Friday, Saturday?
That is blasphemy.
I'll just say, we would have to do a code amendment, because our Francis City Code actually says that you do, and I get like something on Saturday and Monday. And I'm not saying we can't change the code, because obviously, like Brad said, we can change the code. Just throwing that out there, that it would have to be a code change.
And we could even think about it and talk to Tammy and the Mascaros about holding a two-night rodeo.
We've considered
lot of
that,
them
we've
do
considered
that.
that. That has been a topic of conversation.
And people will come to 2 rodeos. I mean, they're not gonna come one night and not the next, so we'll get that double.
And you don't have the break, yeah, just get it done.
You wanna do Saturday night, 2 days? Basically.
Friday,
Like
Saturday.
Friday night and then Saturday night?
Well, I'm saying like the crowd is Saturday.
Yes, you do 2
You
nights
have to.
Saturday.
Yeah.
That's what we want to hear, isn't it?
Well, I'm back in that shack. That's,
Oh, man,
that's just it.
no more.
I have too many ideas that you guys probably won't like, so.
A free for all. There's the raw burgers, there's the beef,
The way we're doing it does not work. I mean, Sam can argue a different point, me and Sam butted heads a lot, but Sam ran that show. I was just there to be a pair of hands. So he knows better than I do, but I spent almost 40 hours in that shack over the weekend and I won't do it again. I mean, it's your moan, but my kid's birthday's on Saturday, saw him for 10 minutes. Monday, I missed all the kids' rodeo stuff.
Well, I,
Like just
believe me, I know.
that shack's crazy, and I've done it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, we have to
I'm
make
good.
sure that, yeah.
Yeah, that's tough. The first year I lived here, I was in the shack almost the
It's-
whole entire Frontier days, and that was a long weekend.
It's a bear. That's why I said, it does not go unnoticed. I know that it's a sacrifice. It's some freaking work. I get it.
It's not feasible anymore to run the shack the way we're doing it. Either need to prep food or have somebody else run it. Or go to like food trucks and the shack's just there for nachos and candy and drinks or whatever, but to cook 300 burgers in 15 or 20 minutes before the rodeo, it does not work.
Yeah, we gotta look at it.
So to do that twice in a weekend, forget it.
Yeah, there's some things I think we can look at. Food trucks might be a possibility to increase those. I don't know, I think there's definitely some things to consider on how we do it. And honestly, I'm not opposed to simplifying. I would have to argue with Clayton about not doing something Monday because I'm stuck on tradition.
Well, that's fine. I mean, it's just Saturday, Monday, fine, whatever, but I think having people.
Just do the Saturday night rodeo with a new Monday.
I mean, I know there's a lot of people in town that like the concert.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the concert's great.
Well, and it's easy, it's like 0 setup, more or less, it's easy.
Yeah, and I think, maybe the people for the concert didn't vote on that as much because the signs for it weren't really out as prominent as they were at the rodeo. That's-
Well, and you gotta go back to the fact that the question is, what's your favorite?
Yeah.
Versus, rank them from 1 to 3 or whatever, right? Like, that may change the numbers, I don't know, but this is saying, which one do you prefer over everything else?
Exactly.
Which I would expect it to be the rodeo.
Right.
For sure. That's the main show.
And the only other thing I would say is you gotta be careful to get too tied to these numbers, because it's really only 175 people.
That's true.
Of fun. Not that it's not valuable, because it absolutely is.
How many people fit in there?
1,500 is the max tickets we have, and we sold like 1,250 this year.
We had 200 or something left.
Yeah,
Just on
so
Saturday?
people were complaining that there weren't
Yeah,
enough
they were
seats
starting to
for
run
people that
out.
were coming in late. And technically, we should have another 200 plus seats, but a lot of people spread out, so if we wanted to really sell the 1,500, I think we have to start numbering.
I think so too. And maybe that's something we can consider, that's not a problem, but
Just don't do as small as open is.
yeah, I'm not a fan of small seats, I like to have my space, I don't like people sitting on my lap. But anyway, yeah, those are things we can look at. I do think this is valuable information to have. the survey, so anyway. Cool. Anything else from Tierney's wise that we need to talk about tonight?
Just glad it's all.
Amen. But now we're starting again for next year.
Yeah.
All right.
Don't bring that up, right?
Why can't I say that?
Okay, any council reports? Any planner reports?
The only thing I have was just to remind y'all of the meeting on the 26th about your property. It's going to be in Camas at 6 o'clock.
I think I have that, but I
I
better make
have
sure.
that on my calendar.
Yeah, I got to be in California for a work trip, came up, so sorry.
Like
It's
this
okay.
year.
I would
California,
rather be in Camas than California.
you really need somebody that.
Yeah, fair. Got that one. Engineer reports, you should have a list of reports.
You, like you mentioned, the bathroom showed up today. Still gotta get them hooked up and everything,
But they're set.
so they're set, they're there.
Smart.
So,
26th at 6, yeah.
we started the 1,000 East Waterline project. They're moving right along. Making mowing,
Already upset with the neighbors.
so we're moving along with that. The tank, they're working on the lines that go from the well up to the tank. The tank's pretty much done. They've got all their forms and stuff out. Just gotta get it filled up and tested and that.
That's awesome.
Trying to think what else.
Did they do all of that before backfill?
Yeah,
Testing
we're
and
trying to do
before
it so we
backfill?
can see if there's any leaks on the outside of the tank. Trying to think what else. Sewer issues, working through those. Building.
We fixed it.
Met with them today, they're hoping to have plans done in the next 3 weeks, so we can get out the bid. We had a late, another contractor put in past our deadline.
To pre-qualify?
To pre-qualify. It's Cobalt Construction, has anybody heard of them? I've never heard of them, have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Good, bad, indifferent?
Any business in Salt Lake, or pretty good?
So are you, is the council willing, since they didn't meet the deadline, are we willing to add to our pre-qualification list? That gives us another person to bid on the project, which is always a good thing.
How far behind were
They just got it to me about 2 weeks ago, which is about a month too late. But it's just pre-qualification, it's not,
We're not gonna get in trouble with anybody else, I'd say, sure, we're not.
no, we're not, because it's not,
Kind of happen with it.
we haven't got anybody at the plant yet, but put out the bid and stuff yet, so.
I just don't want 4 other people coming up saying, hey, we would have bid that, but we missed
we're-
deadline, now this guy gets in. So if we don't think that's gonna happen.
We've asked several contractors, a lot of contractors said they're just too busy right now, so I don't.
Okay.
I think we ought to just,
Okay, other than that, I think that's it.
I was gonna ask you something. I don't know whether it was this one before. Okay. I don't think I have anything. Most important about the motion of the night is what I'll think.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All right, dude. You second?
There's second.
I will, second.
I'll second. We'll all second.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks.
You want to stay
Hey, you wanna
here?
stay longer?
I've done that first.